Today I'm be showing you my Shadow Corpse Explosion build. Not only does this build decimate, annihilate mobs faster than I've seen any other build do. Now I'm not talking about small mobs. I'm talking about the largest mobs, those kill all, get hundreds of enemies spawning in on the event mobs. This build kills the fastest. Now it can't hit for like single target million. Well, it can hit single tick occasionally on a million, but it can't like consistently hit any target for 10 million. But as you're going to see in a moment, I can shred a butcher in maybe about 10 seconds, 15 seconds, give or take, depending if I already got my Shadow Blight passive going, or if I got some other buffs already going, or if I have to start from scratch, as you'll see in the video. So I'm just going to show you this gameplay right here, and then we'll jump right into everything about this build, skill tree, Paragon tree, what perks to put on what pieces of gear, what bonuses that you want in the gear. So just enjoy the rest of the gameplay, and we'll be kicking off everything included with this build in just a few seconds. Now, if this video does well, I will do a advanced tactics on how to exactly play this build, like for tier 50 plus dungeons. For standard gameplay, you can pretty much do whatever, but if you want to see that advanced tactic, like, share this video. If it does well, then I'll follow this up with an advanced tactic for y'all to see. So, gonna start off with the skills. So we're gonna be taking Reap. Now, the main reason for Reap is, one, when we kill an enemy within 3 seconds, we gain 30% attack speed. That also applies to how fast we can launch our Corpse Explosion, and we get a serious buff in our Reap when we get our passives and bonuses going. So our Reap can actually hit once in the middle of fights for like 100k, couple 100k, even like 50k. So you can a lot of times get a kill with Reap and get that bonus. Next, every 5 seconds it can guaranteed drop a corpse. Decompose is way too slow for T4 high level difficulties. It is very annoying to try to use this to get corpses. As long as you know the timing of when you're going to generate a corpse, Reap is so much better for starting off the bombs. Next, we're going to be increasing our maximum essence. Now, this really isn't that big. It's not really that much needed, but there's not too much that we can do. And there is one other reason that I take that, and I forget why I actually increase it, but there is something with that reason that I do increase that there. Going to be putting Blight to 5, definitely. And it's not terrible if you get extra points in your gear for Blight, but it's not what you're looking for, and I'll get into that in a moment. Ideally, though, Blight at 5, Blight slows enemies. You deal additional damage while Blight is going. So while you're spamming your Corpse Explosions, especially when you got your Shadow Blight passive going, you can hit a high value target so hard, a couple 100k plus, very quickly with Blight. You can even do that with a 1 level Blight, but 5 levels. Then when you get the Harley Quinn's quest, 9 levels, this actually hits really hard, and it interrupts attacks with something I'm going to show you in a moment. Next, we have a very big skill. This is Hued Flesh, or however you pronounce that. Gives us a 12% chance, 24 on a boss, to generate corpses on a hit. Now, tick damage actually technically counts to get this to proc. So on your Blight and once you land that first Corpse Explosion, you have a very good chance to get another corpse. This is much needed even if you get additional in your gear, that is actually okay. We'll get into the gear in a moment though, but we definitely need at least 3 there in order to occasionally generate even more corpses once we get going with our bomb explosions. And whenever there's a mob, as you saw in the video, it's just guaranteed. Once you got that first corpse explosion on a nice mob or a handful of enemies, you almost never don't get a second one and start off a chain reaction. The more they are, the faster they die. Next, we're going to be taking 5 copies of Blood Mist. Definitely need the cooldown there to be low. It's not as much for the life gen, but it's to get the cooldown as low as possible. We use that to also help proc our Shadow Blight passive. Next, we're going to be taking Corpse Explosion. I mean, you guessed it, we're putting 5 there as well. Now, this is huge. As many 3+4 as you can get on Corpse Explosion. Definitely want those in the gear. At the moment, I got a lot more shadow and darkness damage. I don't really have too many plus on the Corpse Explosion right there, but even with it, like as you saw, just hit for over 1,000,000 damage. I can delete mobs, and that's just based off this low number of 15k. Like, this number is going to get up there once I get Harley Quinn's crest, and I got like some other +3s in the gear. Now, next we're going to be taking 15% in the radius, and obviously we're making it shadow damage. This is a shadow corpse explosion build, and it does more damage. So now this is how we get our essence back. We don't need any essence cost reduction. Simply blowing up corpses will get our essence back to use our blight. Like, we can't sit there and spam 20 blights, but when you use your blight strategically to get corpses and stun enemies, then when you set off your corpse explosion, you're not going to be struggling to be able to use blight strategically when you want to. And it just works out. Like, you don't need more than that. That's all the essence recovery we need right there. Next, we're going to be dealing 12% additional damage. Now, this is a +1 I got in the gear right now, so you actually get +9. But you're always setting off corpses, so the more corpses you set off, it's just going to keep going at a steady increased damage. Like, you basically have this for most of the gameplay, and when you really need it, when you're destroying those mobs, it's 9% extra damage. So, definitely taking that. Now, this one is more for high level gameplay. Like, this is when you start getting to those T40, T50 dungeons. Like, this is definitely needed to help you and your team. The build struggles a little bit with the 1v1 high health elites. A little bit. It takes a little bit to ramp up and kill them. There is some advanced tactics, which the video does well. I'll do a video on the advanced tactics on how to kill that and all that. But so right here, we're going to use this for the slow and the damage reduction. It is twofold. It is for taking out high value targets, and if you got a group that's a little bit underleveled with you and they're struggling, or you see like the Wrath or anything that can hit really hard, just quickly tag it. Now, not only does it give us that, and we only need the 1 level in it because we don't really need to ramp it up. Like, the slow and damage reduction right there is fine. We don't need more than that. If you get it, that's fine in gear, but don't worry about it. Don't try to go for that. So we're going to be taking the lucky hit. This one gives us a 10% chance to be stunned. I mean, that's okay. It's just a plus. Not really why we're taking it. We're also taking it for this perk right here. So when we hit enemies that we decrepify, and when we're trying to kill that high value target, this allows us to get our mist back faster. Spamming mist gets us our key passive. So when you go reap, corpse explosion, spam a couple blights, spam another corpse explosion, because you're basically guaranteed the proc off of that. Then this is all while it's cursed. Then you should have your mist back after like 1 or 2 repetitions of that. Spam your mist, spam corpse explosion, spam well, not spam, but hit reap, then corpse explosion, go back into blight, And as long as you keep the curse on it, you're just going to keep getting your miss back and you're going to ramp up damage. And while it takes a little bit of time, you're not running for your life on those high value elites. And strategically, you can pretty much face tank most of them. So now this is from gear. We're not actually using corpse tentacles like that. But you are going to need it. So you want at least one rank in it. And we're doing it mostly for the vulnerable. We want to slow enemies, pull enemies, and make them vulnerable. 3 seconds after a pull is enough time to go straight into bombs. If you got like multiple spread out rafts, you can pull one section, then use your blight to pull another section, get them all together, dash to one side of them, then release the corpse explosion, and goodbye everybody. So this is really huge. And also with the curses, because it has a low cooldown, we can basically get this back instantly if we are cursing the enemy that we're trying, or mob we're trying to take out. So next we're going to be taking damage enemies with darkness skills, because we're always damaging enemies with darkness skills. Everything is darkness besides corpse tentacles. Increases our movement speed by 15%. Now this is personal preference. This is a stick and move, set up strategic points and annihilate mobs build. So I like that extra movement speed. Not really enough points to get to the end with this build, which would be nice. So I choose to give myself even more movement speed to strategically take out mobs. Next, we're going to be doing when a corpse is formed, we gain Fortify. Now, this is because Fortify in the gear has a high range, so we're looking for damage resistance while fortified to make us more tanky. Gives us 10% damage reduction to start, and we can very easily ramp that up to like 50, 60. Can't get too crazy with it because then the value diminishes, but you can get like a good 50% off of that. Next, we're going to be taking damage reduction by 18% for having no minions, because we run no minions. And we're going to be increasing the sacrifice bonuses by 60%. Alright, this doesn't increase them a whole lot. It's off the base value, but for 3 points, we really do benefit from this. It does give us a nice chunk in our shadow damage, so gonna be taking that. Lastly, gonna be taking the increased attack speed while healthy. With this build, if you're good, 95% of the time plus you're gonna be healthy. And for that reason, we're going to be taking 12% additional attack speed. This also works with Corpse Explosion, how fast we can spam the bombs. The faster we spam the bombs, the more our damage ramps up, the more faster the mob gets annihilated. So this is actually like 12% extra damage, which actually even equates to more, because if we don't ramp up fast, then we're not going to get enough bombs where we just straight annihilate everything. I know I said lastly, but obviously we're taking the Shadow Blight Passage. I mean, as a shadow build. So that is the skill tree. Next, I'm going to show you the Paragon tree, and we'll get a little bit into the glyphs, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time versus showing you the path. Now, this is everything. You're going to need every Lilith statue. You're going to need to be fully renowned, 100 level 100 in order to do this. So the first spot that we're taking, we're going to be using the shadow damage over time, and we deal 10% increased damage to enemies afflicted by shadow damage. Now I'm just going to back off this for a second. Let's see if we can get this where it doesn't actually show anything. So right there, I'll leave that up for, I don't know, a handful of seconds. If you need to, just hit the back button. It'll take you back 5 seconds, and you can pause and copy and paste for your build. So our second tree, I'm sorry I don't got the names for all of these, but just to show you one. Oh, that's the basic one. Obviously, you're starting with that. But I'll show you the bonuses so you can see what tree it is. Like this is the one with the shadow damage over time and the shadow damage. So right here, we're going to be taking the one for in Paragon nodes within this range gain a 75% bonus to their non-physical damage and damage reduction modifiers, because there's not anything else we can really do to boost the shadow damage one over here. And not only does it boost the shadow damage, but it also boosts the resistance, which is kind of nice when you get those portals that do the explosion damage. It doesn't kill you. You can move freely through darkness. So you get the little bonus of the resistance. And we also deal 10% increased non-physical damage. Guess what? That's shadow damage. So this is a really nice glyph for this spot, the best one we could put over here. Now I'll start with the bottom. Actually, I'll put it right about here, and then I'll move up to the top. So I'll show you the first half right over here. We'll leave this up for like 5 seconds. That way you can go back with the back button if you need to. And now I'll show you the other half. So we'll move it up to right about here. Try to get in this middle spot. And I'll leave that up for about 5 seconds. That way, if you need, you can go copy and paste this right here. Alright, moving on to our third Paragon board. So this is the one that has the resistance. Like, this was just taken because, like, I was already on the path. So, like, you know, 1 point. Resistances are significantly nerfed at the moment. They don't give you the true value, but it's something. It wasn't bad for 1 point. Better than 5 intelligence. That's all I'm saying. So we got the glyph right here, and we're going to be using this to boost our damage to elites, because this build is a mob annihilator, but it is a little slow to ramp up damage on the 1v1 unstoppable elites and some of the bosses, teleporters that don't want to sit still and die, and you got to bring ads or you got to slow play and build the damage up. So we're taking that bonus damage to elites, we're buffing that right there, we're getting more on our skill damage with intelligence, and we're dealing 2% increased damage up to 12% for every corpse. So on our really big mobs, when we're standing in front of it, after the first couple bombs, we're getting 12% till everything in front of us dies. So that is a really good one from over there as well. Now, this board, as you can see, is we're not really expanding out of this board. So I'm just going to leave it right here for about 5 seconds. That way you can see exactly what I did with this one. Alright, so we're going to pan out a little bit. We got 2 more boards. So we're going up to the right now. You know what? That one doesn't connect. So we'll actually go with this board next, because this is the next connecting board. So right here we have the increased shadow damage, and this also gives us a damage reduction whenever we deal shadow damage to an enemy, stacking up to 10%. So just a couple of ticks and that enemy deals 10% less damage. Also helps us with our 1v1 high unstoppable elites and more deadly enemies. So this is a very big one. Extra shadow damage equates to extra damage over time, and all our other moves besides corpse tentacles. So this one we can kind of position right in the middle here to get the whole thing. As you can see on the bottom, it is all 4 of these right here. It's just going to cut that one off right there. So I'm just going to cut that one off, and we'll go to right here. So you can go back if you need, if I can get it right there. So I'll leave this up for like 5 seconds. That way you can go back if you need. And lastly, we have this board right here. Not really going deep into this board. We're not taking a glyph. We're just taking this basically so we can get, with at least 2 corpses nearby, we gain 15% damage reduction. With no corpses nearby, we deal 15% increased damage. So we're either getting 15% damage reduction when we need it, or we're dealing 15% more damage when we need it. So it's just a win-win. Either way, you're getting 15% of something you need. So for just a few points, and while on the way, we can also grab 25% damage to healthy enemies and additional 25% damage to healthy. Well, I didn't reach that dex. That's like the only bonus in the entire Paragon tree I couldn't hit. It's not a dex build, so you don't want the dex, not really. And the critical strike chance, you do get a little critical strike chance in the build. You probably end up somewhere between like 10 25%, but tick dot damage can't crit, so the second is kind of pointless. We're basically taking this for the healthy, and if you do happen to get enough all stats or a dex in your gear that it just happened to be there as your fourth one you couldn't get rid of, you might actually get the additional bonus 25. So if you do, then you got that. And that is the Paragon board for this build. Moving on to the gear, what aspects do you want? What bonuses do you want? Starting with the helm, ideally you do want the unique Harley Quinn's helm, but you have to be at least level 90 to get it. It's one of the rarest drops in the game, so it's going to be a while before you get that one. So for your aspect on your helmet up until you get that, what you want is either the bubble or you want barrier on damaging an elite. Now, the perks that you want in this are high value maximum life. You don't need a whole ton of high value maximum lives, but having 2 to 3 in the build with all the damage resistance that you're already going to be having in the build, it does make the build very tanky, and you can basically avoid all the one-shot kills, most of the two-shot kills. So that is why I have like 2 to 3, or recommend 2 to 3 high value maximum lives in the build. Also going to be needing some cooldown reduction in the build. You don't gotta go crazy with it, but yeah, we're kind of looking for somewhere around 40, 50 minimum cooldown reduction once we get to the mid-max point. Now, you're also looking for damage resistance while fortified. You don't really want damage resistance while enemies afflicted by shadow. You don't want damage resistance. The ideal one to get is damage resistance while fortified, but the other two I mentioned are okay. Basically, we're fortified 100% of the time, so it also has the highest range value of a damage resistance you can get. So as you can see right here, it actually can roll up to 20.2%. So all you need is like 3 damage reduction while fortified in your build at the high value, and you are set. You're going to be incredibly tanky. As a backup, like I said, damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time is another decent one. We're definitely looking for shadow damage as another huge one to see in the gear. Another huge one is corpse explosion rank increased by 3. And just to show you that aspect for the chest piece, we're doing gain 50% or 0.050% increased armor, stacking up to 50%, and we're throwing damage reduction while control impaired on all the armor that's in every spot. Now, the reason for this is our ticks ramp up our armor. So it is very easy once you start going in a battle to ramp up to that extra 50% and stay at that 50% until the battle is done. So while we're just standing there and trying to annihilate the mob, this gives us a lot of armor if something unstoppable does manage to hit us hard. So if you miss your evade or you just didn't see an attack coming, you don't really have to worry as much because you're sitting on a ton of armor. Moving on to the gloves. We're going to be taking the Ancestral Unique Gloves Howl from Above. Now we're taking this for basically just two of the perks. The two perks we want to see high values are Corpse Skill Attack Speed, because this affects how fast we can spam our bombs, how fast we can ramp up damage, and obviously a high value on the legendary aspect, increased damage. Those are the two that you want to be high values. If you happen to get the other three at high values, great. That's not why we're taking this. Corpse Skill Attack Speed, extra damage. Next, we're going to be taking the Ancestral Unique Pants. Now, you could take a standard Ancestral Legendary with extra damage to Corpse Explosion and a couple of the other stats you're missing. But I personally really do like the effects that heal you beyond 100% life, grant you a barrier. Now, ideally, you really do want that high roll because we're running a couple of increased maximum healths to begin with in this build. As I said, I do recommend 2 to 3 high value maximum lives in the build. When we do get that overheal, 80% of that for 8 seconds is massive. So we have 3 ways to proc this. One, this allows us to use our potion even if we're at full health and just instantly get that barrier. 2, we have life on kill in our build on our scythe, and you can get an additional life on kill to even help ramp up when you're, well, stay at max health and keep proccing this barrier when you're fighting mobs. 3, we heal through mist. So if we already have full health and we open an attack with a mist, guess what? We just started that battle without even using a potion with additional barrier. So because we have 3 different ways to proc this with low cooldowns and the ability to use to proc basically 2 out of the 3 whenever we want, this is a really nice legendary aspect. Okay, so the bonuses it comes with, all stats. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, all stats is one of the ones besides the specific ones that you would want as your generic one anyway. Potion drop rate. Potion drop rate helps us use the barrier. So potions are good. You don't want to be short on potions or out of potions. Then you're probably dead. Lucky hit chance? Whatever. I mean, 5% chance to heal. I mean, occasionally you get it. And guess what? I forgot. You have 4 ways to proc it. If you get that lucky hit chance while you're at full health, you also procced the barrier. Completely forgot about that. But yeah, you have actually 4 ways to proc it. And healing received. Because we have additional healing received in our Paragon tree, this allows us to, even while we're at half health and we use our potion, very easily get that barrier. So the perks it comes with, while it would be nice to have a little bit more damage or a little bit more damage negation, this does help constantly get your barrier and helps a little bit with the all stats. So it is a very nice piece of gear for the Necro. I see a lot of people talking about using it in other builds. I would definitely never ever recommend it for any other build, but this build can proc it so easily that yes, I do like it for this build. You could make it a little bit more offensive by stacking up damage in that one, but I really do like the tankiness of that with how easy it is to proc that with the Necro. So next, we're going to be taking the 4 Evade Boots. Now, this is because this is a stick and move set up strategic points build. So yes, while we do hold down positions quite frequently and just hold RT to win, it is really nice to be able to have 4 evades so we can actually get to that point that we want to get to and hold RT to win. So we want movement speed. This is another thing that you probably want like 2 to 3 in the gear. Like definitely want like ideally besides the one the 15% in the skill tree, which you basically have like 80% plus the gameplay, you do want probably around 40% movement speed in the build. So you're super fast, you can kite enemies. That with the 4 of Aids is going to make it really easy to stick and move and ramp up damage because you're hitting the right spots at the right time. Now, all stats, once again, that's good. Dodge chance against distant enemies, don't need that. I mean, I've been trying to get a better roll on these boots forever. Poison resistance, don't copy that. Go with the other ones I've been saying. And imprinted blight pulls in enemies. So this is huge. When we're going with our corpse tentacles, like we can just pull more groups in with the blight, get everybody grouped up, and then just annihilate, decimate mobs. So blight is really good on rafts too, to pull the rafts together to quickly take them out. It's a very underrated aspect, but for this build, it comes in clutch. Plus, it slows and interrupts attacks when it pulls. That is another huge plus of that aspect. If they're not unstoppable and you hit them with that blight, with that aspect, you will interrupt their attack and just like toss them around like rag dolls. Like I said, you're not going to have the essence to spam it like 10 times, 15 times in a row, but when you strategically use it in between your other attacks, you can toss some groups around like ragdoll. So it's real fun. Now for our scythe, we're going to be taking, this is a really long one, the Black River. This comes with life on kill, intelligence, damage to distant enemies, which we are doing a lot of damage to distant enemies with the corpse explosion and our blight. And we get damage to healthy enemies, and we get one ranked fueled by death for increased damage. And now this aspect says it consumes up to 4 additional corpses, but you only need 1 corpse. If there happens to be 5 corpses in a really close area, it will consume all 5. But at that same time, then you get 25% increased radius for everyone it consumes. So we only need 1 corpse to get our bombs going on a tight little grouping of enemies. But if you do have a ton of corpses, it will consume 5 at the beginning. But ideally, we actually want that on mob. You will decimate mobs so much faster with this because with that increased radius, it's hitting more targets, more tick damage, more corpses. Even though we set off more corpses at once, this is what allows us to just decimate mobs, and we get increased damage. You're looking for that. Ideally, you do want a high value, most importantly on the increased damage and the larger radius. Everything else in the top is secondary to that. And we'll be adding damage over time, obviously, for our gem. Next, for our focus, we're looking at Blood Mist leaves a trail for 4 seconds that deals shadow damage. So you want a high value on it, but it's not killer. What we're really taking this for is our Blood Mist ticks very fast. So we can actually increase the rate that we get our Shadow Blight passive to allow us to deal massive damage by making our Blood Mist, which we use to get out of CC and hit targets, use it as an opener to set up corpse tentacles, use it spamming on elites to get our Shadow Blight passive up. So this right here allows us to get our Shadow Blight passive up, deal damage, and also while we do it, it allows us to move very quickly and get to the position that we want to be in to set up our corpse tentacles. So don't really see anybody using this, don't really see anybody doing this build, even though it is a lot of fun. But yes, we're going to be taking Blood Mist and the focus. And we want, damage resistance while fortified. The life on kill, willpower, all stats is all fine. Would have liked to see cooldown reduction here, but I didn't get it yet. But There's not too many good things you can get on the focus, so over here are four of the better ones, and then cooldown reduction over willpower would have been a nice one to see. Next, we have vulnerable damage is kind of like a second tier one. The better one would have been damage to crowd controlled enemies, which I'll show you in a moment. And here are our top tier ones for our rings and amulet. Damage over time because it rolls a higher range on the RNG. Shadow damage and shadow damage over time. Our second top tier would be damage to affected enemies by shadow damage over time. And then if you got what you need, cooldown reduction, movement speed, ideally you would want your other one to be what you're missing a little bit of. Now, for one of our rings, we're going to take the one Shadow Blight key passive to get bonus damage every so often when it procs. And I just got this ring, so I didn't add it on, but you're going to be taking the other aspect for the Shadow Blight. You can't miss it. There's only two aspects that have the Shadow Blight key passive in it. I literally just got this ring fucking god rolled. I'm still rolling it to get the absolute god roll, but I got the crowd control, damage to crowd control at the moment. I had like 5 million for the roll, but ideally what you want in your resistances is probably cold, 2 colds, 1 fire, and 1 lightning. That would be your ideal. Cold is the worst for this build. Fire, so you can withstand a couple of the blasts because you're always standing pretty close to the mob and you're holding RT to win, so occasionally you do get hit with those fires. And also lightning, just occasionally if you get hit with a wrath. It's not going to save you with IT 50 plus from a wrath, but it does help a little bit with like the pillars and all that. Those are the ones that you're probably going to get hit with the most. So 2 colds and 2 fires, or 2 colds, a fire, and a lightning would be ideal. And put the other Shadow Blight passive aspect on the second ring. You're going with armor for all of them for your gem because the all resistances is a little bit broken at the moment. It doesn't give the true value. Armor actually does give you the true value. Now, right now, the main damage, one of the main damage aspects in this game has been disabled because of the Barbarian Whirlwind move being able to infinitely stack damage with it. But the ideal aspect for this build would be to deal additional damage up to 30% if you put it in the amulet with a maxed roll based off your primary resource. Because our corpse explosion generates essence and keeps us at max essence without using any, we always have max essence, so we're just getting 30% bonus damage. So that is huge. Problem is currently it's disabled. If it is currently disabled, then you want to run basic skills, grant damage resistance, because you're always sticking and moving. You're opening on the mobs with the Reap, which is your basic skill. So you basically always get 20% damage reduction. Now, if you want to be a little bit more tanky, you could stick with this, but that's not what I'm recommending. I'm recommending, provided the aspect for the increased damage based off your primary resource is fixed and does still apply to the corpse explosion, putting that in the amulet and getting as close to 30% bonus damage as possible. Also, it would help a little bit with your opening attack on your Blight, making that even more powerful. And because you use it interchangeably when you're spamming Corpse Explosion, you can hit really hard with that once your Shadow Blight key passives are popping and your aspects are proccing. So that is all the bonuses, like I said. Roughly like 40% movement speed, 40% cooldown, all damage over time. Look out for bonuses on the corpse explosion. And that is it. That is, I'll show you the stats real quick. Now this is not min-max. As you can see, I have a couple of things that aren't done, uh, not ideal rolls that should be swapped out. But let me show you the stats real quick. You're gonna have to go back like 5 seconds. I'm just going to slowly show the current stats. I do have all 4 of those glyphs from the Paragon tree. They are all level 21. So besides having Harley Quinn's helm and high value rolls, this is probably like 75% mid maxed. These you will be dealing more damage once you get completely mid maxed, but these are roughly the values you'll get within a couple of days, maybe a week of grinding out gear and building up rolls, because you're probably not obviously going to get all god rolls right off the bat. And if you do, great for you. You skip the grind. But yeah, that is my Shadow Corpse Explosion build. Lot of fun. I live in the darkness, never see my character. It would be nice if they highlighted it, but I love it. I love living in the darkness and just decimating mobs with the Corpse Explosion. I don't really care if I don't hit for 10 million. I still destroy a mob as fast as anybody else, and I'm tankier than most of the builds. Like, this is basically like almost druid level tankiness. Like, but anyway, if you like the build, leave a like, comment, share. It does help others find the video, and if it does do well, then I'll get that advanced tactic video up for you, so you can see how to stick and move and when to use which abilities in high level dungeons.